This is an excerpt of a piece written during my junior year fiction unit. The prompt for it was to write a story whose backbone was a constantly rising string of tension. This is only the first third, so I'll keep the ending up to you. When the sun sets. Amelia hugs her girlfriend. Her grin stretches wide across her face and her eyes are glistening. "I love you," she whispers. She feels Rose gently kiss her hairline. "I love you too, Angel," Rose says, just as softly. They stare at each other for a few more moments, then a squeeze from their joined hands and Rose is gone. Amelia hears the announcer make the final call for Rose's flight to Tokyo. She stands and stares into the sea of bodies. She looks out across the bustle one moment more before leaving for her car and driving home. The house is quiet without Rose, but Amelia doesn't mind. She falls into the routine of cleaning, and soon the sun is set and she is sprawled on the wide bed, reveling in the space to do so. Her cat leaves his usual place at her feet to sleep on the folded jacket that Rose left on the bedside table. She sends a goodnight text to Rose and quickly falls asleep. Her thoughts are of her girlfriend and the sparkling Tokyo skyline. The news the next morning is predictable. Car crash, weather, local interview, the works. She lets the TV run while she makes breakfast. The news anchor announces that a plane has had to make an emergency landing over the Pacific and Amelia drops the spoon down the garbage disposal. She curses and quickly fishes it out, then sets it on the drying rack. The water starts to run too hot, but Amelia doesn't move because the anchor has just said the flight was bound for Tokyo. When her hands sting from the heat, she switches the tap to cold. The anchor has just said the flight was bound for Tokyo. Her hands stop hurting, but the news anchor just said the flight was bound for Tokyo. She scrawls the announced flight number on the back of her still red hand with shaky fingers. The news anchor says there are search parties. He says that they're pretty sure where the plane went down, so it shouldn't take too long to find the wreckage. He says that there's a low chance of serious casualties. He says that everyone should be safe on land within a few days. Then the story changes, and they are talking about sports. Amelia speed dials Rose. She clutches her phone with both hands like it's the fruit of Eden, pressing it to her ear with the desperation of the starving. The ringing sounds again, and again, and again. She only hears dial tone, and then the cheery greeting from Rose telling her to call back later. She makes a note in her phone to call back later so she and Rose can laugh about the whole mess. In the meantime, she flips through one of Rose's planners. It doesn't have a copy of her plane ticket, but that's okay, because she doesn't need to know Rose's flight number. It doesn't matter. Amelia looks down at the flight number she wrote on her hand. It was just a number. It didn't have to be Rose's. She takes a deep breath and goes to put the planner away, but tosses it to the couch instead. Maybe she could call Rose's bosses later about the flight. The day was still young, and she doesn't need to worry about Rose. Rose is fine. When she does call Rose's work later in the day, a young man answers the phone. "Hello, you've reached Cross Incorporated," he says. "Yes, hello," Amelia says. "Do you keep records of employees that you fly out on business trips?" There is a pause. Papers rustle on the other end of the line. "Yes," he says. "Yes, we do." Amelia lets out a relieved sigh. "That's fantastic. Could you tell me what flight Rose Pendel is on?" The secretary is quiet for a moment before speaking. "I'm afraid I can't divulge that information to just anyone, miss." "I'm her girlfriend," Amelia pleads. "Please, I need to know if she's okay." The line goes quiet for a moment, save for more sounds of moving papers. "Can I get a confirmation?" Amelia sputters. "What do you mean, confirmation? How am I supposed to confirm that she's my girlfriend? If you could contact a listed family member, I'm sure that would work. Could you get them on?" "I don't know," Amelia says. "I don't know if they'll pick up." "I'm sorry, miss," he says. "Please call again later when you contact them, and I'll be glad to help you sort this out," he says. Then he hangs up. Amelia stares at the phone. The final click echoes in her ears. Tears sting her eyes, and it takes a few deep, centering breaths to clear her vision. With shaky hands, she dials Rose's mother. She doesn't pick up. She dialed Rose's brother. Again, voicemail. Then her chest hurts, and she is breathing too quickly, and she is crying again, but it is okay. She can call back later. It'll be all right. Thank you. So my next piece is also an excerpt from a creative nonfiction piece I wrote in junior year. This essay was to be written entirely in sentence fragments. I decided to use this form to write about my experiences with dissociation, a mental issue that I deal with, characterized by a feeling of disconnect from your body and the world around you. Dissociation, or the cerebral ISS. Free to move, but I can't because my head has spun away from myself. My head twisted away from my neck, sailing away sans spacesuit or tether cord, the space station of my body becoming less than the stars that shine around me. Peering through a pane of glass, that still world, fogged with a warm breath that I don't care to wipe away. This static reality, fractured. Two thick lines breaking through the stillness, letting motion bleed from the fractal fissures. Reality remaining motionless. In 3 parts, each slightly offset, tilted too far left or up out of frame, just enough so I can see their fragility, their true insubstantial nature, just enough so I could see the curve of the CRT screen of existence. Fizzing static burning just beyond their event horizons, the same static that burns underneath my flesh, flying away from the black hole facade of my continued existence. Still life, painted on the backs of my eyelids and stitched to the underside of my tongue. Thank you. So the final piece is a poem I wrote in senior year, this year. It is from the 20 Little Poetry Prompts project, a list of 20 mini prompts to compile into one final piece in the order they're given. These included things like write a line in another language and state something confidently that is completely preposterous. Even without knowing the prompts, I hope you'll enjoy. A note, this piece does begin with an epigraph. The epigraph will conclude when I say its title and its author, and my piece will begin with 1. I watch the fireflies. The dawning of Lunasa. Come we now to mark Lunasa, 3 quarters round the wheel. Give we thanks for tribe and allies, as battle bruises heal. Hearth and harvest welcome brothers and sisters to our feast. We fought with valor, shared our treasures. The crow flies home far east. Quarter days. Athanya na Prashan. 1. I watch the fireflies dance across the yard. They are stars dreaming in the tall grass. 2. I voice the smoke that clings to your hair. 3. The tiny airborne flames of sparklers bite at your fingers. A storm rumbling, tense in the distance. Across the fields lies a haze of heat and lazy little flying things. The sweet smell of honeysuckle languidly graces the air. Warm wineberries twirling through my mouth. 4. The sounds of laughter and cricket song dance across my tongue and fingertips. 5. As the honeyed harp notes of Lu croon gently through the waves of tearful whin. 6. The fireflies swirl among the low grasses. They are stars waking from their springtime sleep. 7. I wonder what it would be like to dissolve back into the primordial mist of stardust from whence I came. 8. To push away the swollen knot of linear existence and simply breathe. 9. The sun sets gently among the trees, and the air is warm and sweet, and so I am safe. 10. With a longing sharp as it is pointless 11, the lilting wildfire of ego 12 sears a raging caress against the curved cheek of id. 13. The next time you gaze up at the summer stars, pluck them down for me into a bouquet of serendipity. 14. Talk to her. The heat haze glimmer of the girl in the fields. 15. And you will find yourself among the breaths of wind. 16. the raging twilights. 17. Take me back to the warmth I will remember, ending with 18. Come to me, amralime, gabilukhuda. 19. Storm clouds settle onto the horizon. A dusty, purpling bruise waiting to pounce. 20. The sweet smell of burning things curls around your cheeks. Smoke nestling into the locks of to Miss Fishow for simply existing. Thank you for your endless patience, for your encouragement and your practicality and your kindness. Thank you for never giving up on us, no matter how much desperation we might inspire. You have taken every step of this journey with us. You will always mean something to me. Thank you. And thank you to Miss Anderson for, again, dealing with us with grace every single day. Thank you for taking us and molding us into seasoned, skilled writers. Thank you for taking your time with us, for nurturing us as you would your own children. If you raised Jack and Maggie anything like you raised us, you'll never have to worry about a thing. Thank you to all my fellow writers. Thank you, Gracie, for always bringing a smile to my face, for lighting up every room you enter, even when you don't feel all that luminous yourself. Thank you, Mina, for your gentleness and your serenity, for the peace you radiate and the love you hold for all living things. Thank you, Sean, for being a rock in our more chaotic times, for trusting me and accepting me and never letting go of anything you hold dear. Thank you, Amanda, for the party coop, ramblings about nothing and everything, your every laugh, every smile, every hug. Thank you for your tireless love and excitement for life. Thank you, Sarah, for all the comfort I feel near you, for the hours we've spent chatting, for accepting me so freely and caring for me so readily. Thank you for your easy confidence in our friendship. Thank you, Catherine, for opening yourself to me. Thank you for trusting me with your friendship and care, your dry humor, and your fountaining love, for listening to me ramble at ungodly hours of the evening, for caring for me more swiftly and deeply than I ever deserve. And thank you, Sullivan, for these long years of friendship, for letting me in and allowing me to let you in return. Thank you for the hours of enthusing to me about anything and everything you love, for your life and drive and energy. Thank you for being my friend for all these years. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce a dear friend of mine, one who has been by my side these long 4 years, one who has cared about and watched out for me more than I deserve. Everyone give a grand welcome for our resident mom friend, Catherine McCambley.
Alright, I'm just gonna get right into it. So my first piece is a poem in the form of a pantoum. A pantoum is a type of poem with lines that repeat in a sort of pattern. So if things sound familiar, don't worry, they're supposed to. And I wrote this during quarantine, and it's talking a little bit about my experience with that. Here we go. Our new normal. I try not to drink the old water at my bedside. It always rises up sour in my throat, and still I end up swallowing it all down. What else can you do? It rises up sour in my throat, the collapse, a risen storm. What else can we do? I stay home and cry until my eyes ache. The collapse is a risen storm, and I swallow it all down. I stay home and cry until I ache. I drink the old water at my bedside. Sorry, my voice is breaking a little bit. All right. So my next several pieces actually were done under an encyclopedia project. If the people before me have not explained it, I'm going to explain it real quick. Basically, we wrote different nonfiction entries under this project, and they would be set up like an encyclopedia. So, you know, like A for apple, and you'd write a piece about apples or something. So I've got a couple of those, and I'm just gonna power through them. Here we go. X_X. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and I am doing my dishes and not keeping a journal. I haven't watched the news in a long time, and I think about viruses and vaccines and how this is the year of the rat. I think about how I am not vaccinated for measles, mumps, and rubella, and try to remind myself to remind my mother to coordinate an appointment. When my mother talks on the phone with her boyfriend, he talks about a friend of his who is nervous for a loved one who has an autoimmune disease. My mom snorts and says, "I have like 3. And the line goes quiet for a long while. I feel like I should be doing something. I always thought the plague would feel less normal, more panicked, less like another day, and more like the end of the world. I thought I'd be more scared, but the panic I feel swirls distantly like water in a clogged drain. I tell all this to Carrie, whom I have reconnected with in the middle of a pandemic. That's generally how it always is, he says, 2 years wiser and hushing his fussy baby. Don't you remember, like, the swine flu? The bird flu? I don't. And I don't think it was like this. I can't remember what I did then. Normal things, probably. I definitely didn't keep a journal. All right. My next entry is titled Dermatographia. A skin condition I probably have. The term essentially means skin writing, which makes sense because you can write on my skin. You could drag your nails across my skin and watch your words leap to life. You could probably write legible braille on me. Some part of me is always covered in red welts like I'm breaking into hives allergic to touch. I have grown familiar with the imprints left on my skin, echoes of the clothes I've worn. My bras dig into me and leave violent, angry marks across my shoulders and encircling my ribs. The inseam of my pants trails down my thighs. My body is always reminding me of what has contained me, scraped my surface and left its mark. I am always looking backward, forced to remember every itch I scratched, every table corner my hip has caught. It's all in the writing, and the writing is on me. My next entry is titled Haunting. I'd be a very good ghost. I'm quiet and already linger in places for too long and disappear at a moment's notice. I'd like to be the kind of ghost whose presence is welcomed. A thing who closes bedroom doors people have left open and sits beside you on the couch while you cry. Someone long gone who keeps the living company. A whisper of comfort, an old friend you've never met. My next entry is titled Quiet. There is something very fragile in the air once a private discussion has ended. In the moment where you both sit there in your silence together. On phone calls, this is the part where I listen to my partner's careful breathing. In person, this is usually where I marvel at my friends' faces, observe the different flecks of color swirled into their iris, the unique shape of their nose, or the way their smile softens their face. I am filled with something calm and easy, a bassinet full of cotton. I am comfortable in the places where conversation dissipates, the space we share and the feelings we harbor, the gentle sailboats that they are. My final entry is titled Kid. All right. When, if, I have a child, I'm going to take them frog catching. Show them the way their third eyelid slides over their eyes, how they breathe through their skin, how you have to hold them close to the ground so that when, not if, they slip through your fingers, they tumble to the ground unharmed. I'll show them the egg sac of a praying mantis, stuck to tall reeds like yellowing styrofoam. We'll uncover rocks and roll over logs and watch everything that scuttles beneath them. I want them to know that we live in a shared space. I'll show them burrows and nests and snail shells. I will hold their curiosity and direct it everywhere. I will show them what I know. The muck of a pond, the shell of a cicada. My child won't burn ants under magnifying glasses, won't crush what they can't understand. They're going to have questions I can't answer, but I'll find one. We can ask neighbors and check out library books and Google and research. We'll figure it out. I'll show them everything I know. I will teach them to line up their ingredients when they bake and show them how easy it is to hem pants. I think by then, I'll give good hugs. Teach them how easy it is to hold someone's hand. The world is warm if we make it that way. So my final piece is titled Starlight Starbright. It falls under the genre of magical realism. It's a genre of fiction where basically you have one or two weird things going on, but they're treated as completely normal within the world. All right, Starlight Starbright. This is an excerpt, by the way. Don't know if I said that before. It was Thursday night when all the stars fell. The constellations had crumbled and sent all of their stars tumbling down to Earth. The weatherman from Channel 5 recommended staying indoors, but everyone crowded onto their porches to watch the sky fall apart. The last shower had happened when Diane was about 12. She had been a little bit older than her daughter Cassie at the time. The only constellation Diane had known then was the cicada. Its erasure had been slow enough for Diane to photograph. Those photos were pinned on the fridge with little frog magnets. Diane set up a lawn chair under the back door's awning. Cassie crawled into her lap, and Diane had brought her old camera. Every star sounded different. Some like fireworks before they bloomed, others fierce like wind chimes made of shattered glass. One screamed like the crowd of a baseball game. It was a chorus of vibrant, otherworldly chatter. Cassie kept very still on her mother's lap for once in her small, squirmy existence. The stars rolled down gutters, slammed into windshields, and bounced down stairs. They pooled in the streets and spilled into storm drains. Diane scrambled with her camera and took a few pictures of the fallen stars as they flickered on the pavement. The humidity of the wet summer kept most fires to a dull simmer, but old newspapers still ended up burned, and carefully maintained flower beds singed. The last shower had taken place during a dry summer, and Diane's next-door neighbor's gazebo had went up like it was made of matchsticks. Diane watched the shower crawl closer to her house, but still... Diane had watched the shower crawl closer to her house, but still jumped when a star smashed into the awning with a dull hiss. Sounds like an egg cooking. Cassie squinted up at the awning as the star sizzled and popped above their heads. Yeah, it does, Diane said. She considered the strength of the awning and decided that its barrier no longer seemed protective enough to keep them safe. A few more stars thunked against the awning and rolled down into the backyard. The storm seemed intent to stay where it was. End of excerpt. Now I'm going to read my acknowledgments. All right. Miss McNew and Miss Fishow. Without you, I wouldn't be where I am today. Without you, I'd still be using lengthy dialogue tags and writing soulless poetry. You put up with my nonsense for hours and had to grade my edgy pieces and muddle through my convoluted plot lines. Thank you for being patient with me. I'll miss you both dearly. Mom. I'm really bad at articulating emotional things with my loved ones, but thank you for everything. You've always supported me in every endeavor, from writing to worm charming. You are the most determined woman I know, and you continue to be a huge inspiration for me. I'm glad you're my mom. Thank you. No, I love you. I love you. I love you. Charlotte and Christina. You're good people even if you think you aren't. Thank you for putting up with me. You rarely steal my food and always try your best to make sure I don't make a fool of myself. I've known you both your whole lives, and that isn't a hardship. I love you too. Carrie, you are my oldest friend. You've known me since I was like 11 and haven't ever been anything but kind to me. I still look up to you, and I'm really glad we're still friends. Thank you for listening to me ramble about nonsensical plots and concepts late into the night. You're a real one. Fellow senior writers, if I wrote individual entries for you guys, it would be way too long, so you're getting bunched together. While I'm really disappointed that we weren't able to hang out until the end of our time together, I absolutely treasure the memories we have made. You guys will always be on my mind and have helped shape me into the person I am today. You have never failed to make me feel loved and seen. Thank you for reading my worst pieces without judgment and for laughing at my bad jokes. If you ever want to write some sort of collaborative book or collection, I'm game. I'm honored to have known you, and you will always have a place in my heart. All right. I would now like to take the time to introduce yet another creative writing senior. She's one of the most hardworking students I know and has put up with me at my most chaotic. She worked at a yarn shop, enjoys the color yellow and triangles. Please welcome Sullivan McGee.
The first piece I will be reading is a poem I wrote in 11th grade, and the prompt for this poem was to write about a study of something as something else. A study of childhood as a birch tree. Its bark is white but peeling. It has splotches of brown like a muddy pair of sneakers. The yellow leaves, bright as construction paper, can't stay still for long. They get distracted by rushes of wind or the last summer breeze and scamper away to who knows where. Their eyes in the bark are wide and hungry for every sight they can take in. Every ripe berry, every newborn fawn, every secret hidden in burrows and stuck to the bottoms of rocks. They let squirrels play on their arms. As they swing from one branch to the next like little acrobats, leaves shake free and skip to the ground. The roots tumble over each other and contort their shape in a chaotic game of twister. Their arms branch out from each other, reaching for the sky, or a running stream, or a drip of sunlight. They have trouble making up their minds, so they grow more branches and reach for everything at once. The next piece I will be reading is another poem from 11th grade. This poem is a Sistina, which is a form made up of 6 six-line stanzas and a 3-line stanza at the end. The words at the end of each line of the first stanza are repeated throughout the poem. Sistina for algae, or stronger together. A ruffled blanket of green algae bobs like a boat as it floats across an opaque brown lake. Light is trapped inside the algae on the water. The algae stays together in one giant Pangea, drifting silently and slowly, bumping into logs with a silent crash. A flock of geese lands on the lake and crashes through the algae. Velvety patches of green rotate around each other like orbiting planets. They drift in different directions until their momentum slows and they float, unmoving, on the surface of the water. The algae is in pieces now, small and light. A spot of algae is blocked from the sunlight by a dark canopy of leaves. It is broken further by the crash of a fish leaping from the water. The pieces of algae bob to a slick green lily pad and cling to the side like a child at the edge of a pool. They float together through the chaotic waves and splashes. They hold each other and drift. Another piece of algae drifts to a far corner of the lake where it sits in a spotlight of sun rays. The corner of the lake where it floats is crowded with dragonflies and leaves on the shore crashing into a pile. Some of the leaves land in the lake, green boats that sail past the algae in the water. One piece of algae begins to sink below the water. It desperately tries to drift to the surface, but its soaked green body sinks further and further from the light. Bubbles rise from its surface as water crashes over it. It's failing to float. The divided pieces of algae float in solitude, each one struggling in the water. They wait for a force, something to crash each piece together again, something that will let them drift towards one another. Clouds move in front of the sun, and its light is severed from the lake. The shadowed algae becomes a dark forest of green. A torrent of rain crashes into the lake. The pieces of algae float up and down. The green patches are pushed together once again. They hug each other in the water. They drift as one and steady themselves, stronger together instead of single light pieces. The next piece I'll be reading is a haiku series I wrote this year, and a haiku has 3 lines with 5 syllables in the first line, 7 in the second, and 5 in the third. Spring Haiku Series. A new beginning, budding flowers, and endless potential for growth. Hazy days, midnight storms, a drizzle of rain that lulls me into dreams filled with daffodils and yellow butterflies and dead grass turning green. A single yellow tulip growing in the shade of a holly bush. Small piles of muddy snow lining the sides of roads and sidewalk corners. Forgotten bulbs that spring from the earth, popping up in colorful bursts of velvet petals and frost-covered crocuses I pluck from the ground. A pear tree drowning the yard in white blossoms like a layer of snow. The dead garden springs to life in a colorful fireworks show of flowers and bushes, like a phoenix coming back to life from ashes. Next, I'll be reading a creative nonfiction piece that is an excerpt from the encyclopedia project my class completed this year. The project consisted of different entries for each letter of the alphabet. Field, sunflower. When I think of summer, I think of sunflowers, a yellow square in the middle of a field. There's something unnatural about the juxtaposition between chaos and order. The flowers looking wild but lined up in neat little rows. When I think of summer, I think of weaving between rows of flowers right before sunset. Bees flying past my ear before landing in the dark hearts of the flowers, gnats and mosquitoes hovering over the untrimmed grass. Hair sticking to the back of my neck with sweat and wild pieces falling over my eyes. Dirt clinging to the toes of my shoes. When I think of summer, I think of sun. Flowers. Next, I'll be reading an excerpt from a piece of fiction I wrote this year called The Waitress. This piece is about a waitress in a diner named Victoria who lives with the owner Susie, and Victoria gets transported to an alternate reality that's a post-apocalyptic version of her town. A house across the block exploded. Victoria stepped back and shielded herself from the blast. Pieces of rubble landed around her feet. A hunk of concrete scratched her shin and drew a slender line of blood. That felt too real for a dream. Victoria lowered her arms. What was left of the house was hard to see through the thick cloud of smoke around it, but it looked as though only the foundation remained. Dented cars lined the streets and fires ravaged the empty houses. The silence felt suffocating, so Victoria ran towards her and Susie's house. She didn't know if Susie would be home, but she wanted to find someone. Victoria didn't want to think about if Susie had been in the diner when it disappeared or was destroyed. She ran a little faster. Victoria passed where the park was supposed to be, but there weren't any trees, only dirt and ashes. The air smelled burnt. Maybe there had been a fire, or a nuclear bomb. Victoria reached Susie's house, waited by the mailbox, and tried to spot any signs of life. The roof was half missing, and the house looked singed, but it was still standing. Victoria didn't hear steps, shuffling, or the muted voices of the TV that always used to be on. She slowly walked to the door. The doorknob was missing. She knocked twice, softly. She heard nothing. "Hello?" she said. She knocked on the door, louder this time, 6 knocks in rapid succession. There was still nothing. She put both hands flat against the door and pushed. It gave way a little. She stepped back, then ran at the door, leaning with her shoulder. It flew open and banged against the wall. The walls inside were black. The television was cracked on the floor. The dining room table had fallen apart. The curtains were torn, and the carpet was in rags. "Susie, are you here?" Victoria said. A creak came from upstairs. She climbed the rickety staircase and walked towards the bedroom. The door was on the floor. She stuck her head inside. There was no one there. She walked into the room and looked around. A scorched rocking chair creaked back and forth in the corner. Victoria's heart beat so aggressively she was afraid it was going to start poking out of her chest. She held her breath until her heart slowed down. Victoria searched the rest of the rooms upstairs, but still didn't find Susie, or any sign that she had been there recently. She walked back down to the front door and looked outside. Sweat had broken out on her forehead. The complete lack of people in town led her to believe the worst. The floor of the house vibrated. A beam from the ceiling slammed onto the ground and just missed Victoria's foot. She jerked away and ran out the door back towards the mailbox. The house crumbled apart. The roof curved downwards like the top of a pie caving in. More beams crashed on the floor and smashed the cabinets and tables. The walls gave out as brick after brick disassembled, until there was nothing but a cloud of dust. The final piece I will be reading is an excerpt from a piece of fiction I wrote in 11th grade called How to Get Over Your Fear of Hospitals. The prompt for this assignment was to write a step-by-step guide in second person. Step 5. Observe. It's been 5 years since your surgery, and you've realized your fear has been inhibiting everyday life. Your boss has called you in twice now to say you've been underperforming. You told him you hadn't been sleeping well, but you didn't tell him about the nightmares. Your father is annoyed that you haven't listened to his advice, even more so that you haven't seen your mother yet. Picture him sitting by her bed, lying about where you were. You feel terrible, and the guilt is almost as bad as the spike of fear from seeing a hospital. Almost. Just thinking about walking into a hospital makes your stomach clench and your hands shake. You've lost track of how many times you've argued over the phone with him, or how many times you've lied to your mother over the phone about being too tied up with work or too worried about the weather to visit in person. You stick to observing hospitals. You don't take your old way home yet, past the abandoned hospital, but you look at other ones, modern ones, like the one your mother is in. It's 30 minutes away, but you make yourself drive there once a week. You're late to work one day because of your detour. It doesn't scare you quite as much. The newer the hospital, the safer it should be, because it would have the most advanced equipment. Tell yourself the hospital isn't so scary. It's just a building. But you still can't bring yourself to enter it. You park, but never leave your car. Step 6. Visit the thing that scares you the most. Your father has told you, many times, that exposure is the best way to conquer fears. You take your old way back home. You stop in front of the abandoned hospital and stare at it. Just stare. Don't move. You need to get over this. It's ruining your life. You haven't slept properly for a long time, and your coworkers have commented on the bags under your eyes, despite the makeup. When you do sleep, your nightmares are so vivid you wake up screaming. You haven't visited your mother since she was admitted into the hospital a month ago. Your father calls you all the time to try and get you to come. He said that she's dying, that she wants to see you, that you're being a coward, that you need to overcome this fear for your mother's sake. However, his advice about exposure doesn't seem to be working. A few minutes pass and you realize you couldn't move even if you wanted to. Your mind starts to travel to dark places, but you try to stop it. It doesn't work. You think back to your surgery, the one where they almost killed you. You had slowly come out of your induced sleep while doctors rushed around the room, pain entering your mind like a forgotten memory. Bile crawls up your throat and you force yourself to get your legs working again. You run the full 2 blocks to your house and don't slow down until you get there. You go to each room and flick all the lights on. You jump on your bed and lie alone and tremble like you're freezing, even though you're burning up. You pull the covers over yourself anyway. You can't tell if the wetness on your cheeks is sweat or tears. Step 7. Don't get over your fear of hospitals. Call your mother and tell her the truth. You can't visit her because you're afraid. You're not strong enough. You can tell she's sad by her quiet tone, but she's not angry like your father was. You feel a little better, and you have a little less nightmares. You still freeze up if someone mentions surgery or doctors, and your father is still cold with you, but the circles under your eyes are finally gone. The first people I would like to acknowledge are my parents. Both in my academic and arts classes, my parents are always there, from helping me with math homework, to helping me de-stress, to helping me think of ideas for pieces. They've both always been a huge inspiration to me and my writing. The next people I would like to acknowledge are my creative writing teachers. Mrs. Anderson and Miss Fishow have helped me improve my writing so much over the years, and not only that, but they taught me to enjoy it more too. Some units, like drama and creative nonfiction, I had never been exposed to before, but they taught me to enjoy writing them so much, I definitely want to pursue both of them in the future now. And possibly most importantly, my creative writing teacher showed me how important writing was to me. Through their classes and guidance, I realized how much I loved writing and how I wanted to do it every day. Now, I am pursuing writing in college and know for certain that I want to keep it in my life in some way. Finally, I want to acknowledge the other creative writing students. Their suggestions helped me improve my writing, and even when it wasn't required, I was able to reach out to them and ask for advice. Some of my favorite works I've written only became better, from bouncing ideas off of my peers or directly collaborating with them. I'm going to miss having workshops together and helping each other edit works in ensemble, but I know that each helped me develop my writing in some way.